So I'm gonna hit Shaw with a confession. Sometimes, I don't actually listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast. Sometimes it's kind of annoying. And sometimes it's really long. Also, I am not gonna lie, I'm just gonna say it straight up. 32 Thoughts, just in my own subjective opinion, this doesn't mean anything if you actually do enjoy the product and how it is right now, but I think that 32 Thoughts was a lot more listenable when Jeff Marek was on the show. Nothing against Kyle Bukauskas, the guy. He seems like a very swell guy. He seems like a really normal guy. But Elliotte Friedman and Bukauskas don't have the same vibe and chemistry and just sort of energy that Friedman had with Jeff Marek. Marek is a bold personality in himself, and he did stabilize Elliott's meandering very well, I think, just in the way the dynamic of the podcast worked. So I, unfortunately, don't listen to as much 32 Thoughts as I used to, but NHL Rumor Report does. And even though this tweet was posted earlier this afternoon, we do have a whole bunch of people saying, oh yeah, okay, this is a Friedman quote from 32 Thoughts, but this was a 32 Thoughts podcast episode back from July 6th. Are we going to keep on posting the last 32 Thoughts podcast every day? And to those who are going to go out there and talk smack about NHL Rumor Report for posting quotes from a podcast that was over a week old, I just gotta say, man, the podcast is 3 hours long. Like, I don't know if anybody's really got the time to listen to a 3-hour show and make tweets about every single thing that is said as soon as the podcast is posted. So, while it is true that this info from Friedman is not necessarily new, quote-unquote, the fact is, we haven't made a video about this yet. We've just alluded to it here and there. And I do think that Friedman going out there and talking about it does give the idea some credibility that we hadn't had in the past. Not that he just talked about it today, of course it was from a while ago, but I didn't see it up until now. So let's talk about Elliotte Friedman's commentary on Teddy Blueger and Dakota Joshua. Someone said to him that you shouldn't count out more moves in Vancouver. There have been reports about Blueger and Joshua. Friedman says he doesn't think the Canucks are done tinkering. 32 Thoughts. Now, what's interesting about this tweet, 38,000 views, 21 replies, is the fact that some of the talk about Joshua in particular goes out there and talks about him and the Leafs. Dakota Joshua would be perfect for Toronto. Take Morgan Rielly. He wants to play for his hometown team. Another reply says Vancouver receives David Kampf, Calle Jarnkrok, and Nick Robertson. Toronto receives Joshua and Sherwood. There are a number of folks going out there and talking about Joshua and Toronto. And a top reply goes out there and says, we don't need another D-man, haha. Please take Rielly. Give us your worst defenseman and Joshua. Thanks. And I'm just going to go out there and say, if it's Derek Forbort and Dakota Joshua for Morgan Rielly, I think about it. I do. You would then probably have to trade some other defensemen for forward support, but still, that's a pretty good move, I would say, for the Vancouver Canucks. Dakota Joshua sucks. For $3 million, you're right, but I like him for depth and grit. I think if the Leafs traded for him, retention on his contract would probably be a possibility. I can't stand the Leafs, but Joshua would be a great fit. So a lot of folks are talking about this, and I didn't want to necessarily expand on the Leafs and Joshua conversation. I just wanted to talk more so about Blueger and Joshua in general. Because when it comes to both of these dudes, we have seen a number of folks on Vancouver Canucks Sportsnet 650 radio go out there and discuss names that the Canucks can move. Names that can free up money for the Vancouver Canucks. Because when you think about it, okay, Canucks in their cap space right now, $795,000. That's not a lot. They used all their remaining money to re-sign Brock Besser, to bring in Evander Kane, and to re-sign Garland and Demko. And I get it, Garland and Demko, those contracts don't affect this salary cap right now, because those contracts are for next year, but when you look at the Vancouver Canucks and their forward core, Filipino, maybe not a suitable second-line center candidate. You can move everybody down one and it would probably be reasonable, but you've got a bottom six, which features a bunch of guys who are making a decent amount of money. Drew O'Connor, fourth-line guy, okay, he's not making that much. You scroll down to him, he's making 2.5. Okay, that's not the worst in the world. Plus, the Canucks just gave him that contract. You have Dakota Joshua, who is listed as a fourth liner here. He had a bad season the previous year, and he's making $3.25 million. Joshua had 14 points in 57 games played. And then you have Teddy Blueger, who for the most part has been a very solid and stable Canuck, but Blueger is going out there making $1.8 million a year. Again, it's a little bit less than Drew O'Connor, but Blueger is older, and he is a guy who doesn't provide that same versatility that Connor does because Connor is so fast. Or O'Connor, excuse me. I've been saying Connor the whole time. O'Connor. Drew O'Connor's really, really fast, and there's a lot of value to be had with that on the wing, so I can understand Vancouver keeping him around, especially for $2.5 million. Dakota Joshua and Teddy Blueger together are making $5 million against the Canucks cap. 7.5 if you add on O'Connor's deal, but we're not going to do that for now. So, if the Vancouver Canucks wanted to create some more flexibility to open up money for a second-line C, you're probably interested in moving one, if not both of these guys. That's been the main sentiment that folks like Thomas Drance and Satyr Shah have been talking about on Canucks Radio 2. The Canucks, with their $700,000 in cap space, they are now in a money-in, money-out scenario. They can't just add. They need to be able to find a way to free up money in order to get extra help. And for Teddy Blueger, for example, I mean, the guy's been good, 26 points in 82 games played the most recent season. Of course, we acknowledge, though, that he played a lot more than he probably should have because of all the injuries to centers in the Canucks organization this previous year. And then you have Dakota Joshua, who had a 32-point campaign in 63 games last season, with 18 goals in the regular season and 8 points in 13 games in the playoffs. Dakota Joshua, we know what this guy is capable of when he is on. He is a monster. He is a beast. He forechecks. He hits. He plays with pace. He scores through-the-leg goals. He makes beautiful plays. He just does it all. Joshua is a total animal when he is on his game. But this previous season, he unfortunately was not really on his game, only scoring 14 points in 57 games. Now, here's the thing. If a team like Toronto, for example, is knocking on Vancouver's door asking for Dakota Joshua, what exactly is the salary retention number that they feel comfortable with making this trade with? Because he signed on till the end of 27-28. That's not a short amount of time, and this $3.25 million cap hit is reasonably significant. What is the risk tolerance that you have for Dakota Joshua in adding him onto your team at what dollar amount? Because you can't be certain that he's going to be this version of Dakota Joshua again. For the most part, he had cancer last year, and he had a really down year in terms of point production. He also was hurt for a good chunk of the previous year too, outside of the cancer treatment that he had received. So Dakota Joshua, of course, is in a vulnerable spot performance-wise, and it affects the dollar amount to a pretty significant capacity too, that all of a sudden Elliotte Friedman going out there and talking about this. I mean, yeah, there have been reports about Blueger and Joshua. Everybody's been talking about it on Sportsnet 650. So the question really is here, what teams are going out there and looking for depth in the bottom of their center core, and are Joshua and Blueger appropriate options for that? Joshua has primarily played the wing in Vancouver, but he can play center if you force him to. Blueger is a lot more of a stable bottom six center. $1.8 million is a little steep, and with other names like Aturatu, for example, potentially taking third-line center this upcoming year, you have to question whether or not Teddy Blueger's role in Vancouver really is all too necessary at this point, which is why it bodes well into what Friedman is saying here, saying that, yeah, you shouldn't be counting out moves in Vancouver. There have been reports about Blueger and Joshua. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about these two guys potentially getting moved? And extra thought, what do you think about Dakota Joshua in Toronto? Is that a reasonable idea for you? I think that Joshua does fit the style of hockey Toronto wants to play under Craig Berube, and we do know that, I mean, Joshua was a former Blue, so he probably does have a lot of experience with a Craig Berube-like system, right? So does that make sense in your mind? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.